Hey, this is David Plotz, CEO of CityCast. CityCast is hiring a director of finance. And because you're listening to this, I thought you might be a great candidate for the job, or you might know a great candidate for the job. CityCast is a national network of daily local podcasts and newsletters. And as our director of finance, you would develop our finance strategy and lead finance and accounting. CityCast is growing super fast, and we are changing local media in the US. And as our first finance director, you'd work directly with me to make CityCast an amazing and innovative and fiscally sound business. The job is remote. You could be anywhere in the US, and we're offering a competitive salary, great benefits, and a fantastic set of colleagues. Plus, we're part of a very stable parent company. So if you're interested, please apply. Go to citycast.fm/jobs for more information. That's citycast.fm/jobs.
When Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt was voted into his office back in 2020, he won in a landslide. Mind you, this was during the early days of the pandemic and during the George Floyd uprisings. The fentanyl and housing crisis were only simmering on the back burner, and most of us were still hopeful it wouldn't take much to fix how drug and addiction issues are handled at a criminal level. So Schmidt campaigned on a very progressive platform of justice reform, calling for police accountability and the release of nonviolent inmates due to COVID-19. He wasn't a regular DA. He was a cool DA. He favored rehabilitation over jail time and promised to review claims of wrongful convictions. He was also a big supporter of Measure 110, a law essentially decriminalizing all hard drugs. But 4 years later, many are feeling let down by his and Measure 110's promises. Even he himself has walked back from his full support of the bill. So today on CityCast Portland, DA Mike Schmidt is joining us for an honest conversation on what got him to change his mind on Measure 110 and the extent of his office's responsibility for addressing crime in our city. Just a note that we did catch District Attorney Schmidt in between meetings while sitting in his backyard, so you might hear a few crows in the background. It's Wednesday, March 27th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. You know, Mike, I gotta say, the juxtaposition of your cute backyard, someone, I don't know if they're drying a sheet and you're in this suit is just really, really funny. It's like dissonance in my head right now.
Yeah, I could show you some, chalk drawings from my 3 and 7-year-old.
Oh, man. Well, I'm glad you're able to enjoy your backyard. So last month, you testified at the state level in support of HB 4002, which rolls back a lot of laws set in place by Measure 110. Are you able to walk us through your change of heart? Because, you were such a big outspoken advocate of Measure 110 during your campaign that I think a lot of people were caught off guard.
Yeah, I mean, I've supported Measure 110 I think about 75% or so of Multnomah County voters because what it promised, which was a lot of additional treatment resources for our community, that people would actually be connected to services when they need it. I think there's all kinds of reasons that we could talk about why some of those things didn't come to fruition. But what I saw happening was that, people were not getting connected to the resources that they needed. And we saw also at the same time, open drug use happening on our streets. And, like many other people who live in this community, when you see somebody who is, openly consuming hard drugs, it doesn't make you feel safe. It doesn't make it feel like a place that is welcome for everybody to use and to experience. And so, my goal in working with legislators to fix Measure 110 was to see how we could combine what I wanted, and I think what most people wanted, which is to get people connected to treatment resources, but also recognize that, we have to have a community that is welcoming to everybody, to businesses, to schools, and we weren't hitting the mark on that with the way things were going.
Well, I also feel like in a way, people started to group you with the failings of Measure 110. Did you feel that a little bit? Like Measure 110 wasn't working out and they're just like, Mike?
Well, I think, like a lot of us who have been in leadership roles and positions over the pretty much maybe the most challenging time in any of our lifetimes, to be a leader in some of these city and county positions. I think a lot of us just felt like things weren't working. And then, of course, people want to lump in others with the challenges they're facing. I think there's some of that, but at the same time, I think it's also, what people see is things not working, but they're not really sure exactly why. And so they're looking for solutions.
Right. How does the Drug Policy Alliance feel about your change of heart? Because they were a major backer of Measure 110. I believe they were still speaking against HB 4002, and you received a $30,000 donation before. And then you spoke in favor of the rollbacks of Measure 110. Did they send you an email afterwards?
No. I've got a lot of supporters on all sides of this issue. I've got, folks who wanted Measure 110 rolled back. And I know a lot of people who support me that feel strongly that they didn't want to see any amount of criminalization. And, I can respect that perspective because we know about the war on drugs and, having the rose-colored glasses as if things used to work before is also not accurate. I mean, we see states across the country that haven't decriminalized and face the exact same challenges we do. So I can respect all opinions on all sides of this, and I've got supporters on all sides. But what I did was what I thought was right for our county, for Multnomah County, facing the challenges we have. And, I think what we designed with 4002, and I was very involved right up until the end with legislators, is still a system that completely focuses at every level on getting people connected to treatment. And so that's consistent with my philosophy, and I think consistent with what's best for our county.
A lot of those changes to Measure 110 will fall on your office, like an office that is very publicly lacking resources. And you have yourself on the show have brought attention to the fact that you don't have enough public defenders to deal with the current caseloads. So how do you plan on addressing the inevitable impacts that the rollbacks will bring? I mean, it seems you're going to have even more cases your office won't be able to pursue, right?
Yeah. So just to clarify a little bit, the public defenders in my office are not the same. I have the prosecutors and the state employs the public defenders, but you're exactly right. We don't have enough of them. Every single week, we have judges that dismiss cases because the state has fallen down on their ability to provide somebody with their constitutional right to a public defender. So adding, more cases to our system that is already struggling to have enough defense will clearly run into the same kind of problem. I think my hope is with 4002, and one of the reasons that this is such an important piece is with the deflection piece on the front end. If we can deflect people to that treatment, then they won't end up going into the system and therefore won't need a public defender. So that's why the $25 million investment that the legislature has promised our county for a drop-off site is crucial. Because if people can get connected to that, if law enforcement who encounters somebody says, hey, look, I can take you to jail, we can do that, or I can connect you to this resource, and then there won't be a prosecution, that's going to be crucial to this working.
Tell me more about this drop-off site.
Yeah. So the idea, first of all, the law goes into effect on September 1st. Mm-hmm. And so nobody is kidding themselves that we're going to have some, Taj Mahal built up, can take everybody, type of a resource in place. And there are many players that are going to be collaborating on what this looks like. So this is just my opinion. But I think what we're talking about right now is it needs to be a place where there's some sort of a connector, a navigator, somebody who can do an intake, and the actual treatment resource is not likely to be right there. It might be like, you do an intake and the person says, hey, you really need detox. That's what you need right now. Can we get you to a place that has detox? Mm-hmm. Or it might be you need residential treatment. Let's find you a bed. So I don't see the site itself being the service provider, more of that front door that mm-hmm. law enforcement or other first responders can take people to, and then they can help make those connections. So I think we can get that stood up by September 1st. And then as we build and, I was talking with Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards. She's doing some amazing work on a sobering center that I'm hopeful will come online in the next 1.5 to 2 years. As more and more things come online, we'll have a better chance to connect people meaningfully to those services.
Right. But wasn't that what was supposed to happen with Measure 110 anyhow?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's why all of us who voted for Measure 110 did, is because we believed that those resources would be coming online. And they've been really slow to do that. Now they are. I've been at ribbon cuttings of detox facilities and treatment facilities. So they are coming online and meaningfully increasing. So what's great about 4002 is it doesn't take away any of those Measure 110 investments. And in fact, the legislature has come over the top and added even more investments for us to make some of these changes.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we return, more with Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt. I'm so glad you were able to make it, Mike, because when we heard that you changed your mind about 110, it was pretty big. And I was like, man, we got to get him on. I want to know exactly why. I mean, these are pretty much all the reasons why everyone started changing their mind about 110. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about something else. See, there's a big criticism that a large swath of Portlanders have with the DA's office right now, as that it appears that people are committing crimes don't seem to actually go to jail, or they're released once they're booked. And I just want you to talk me through it. So the reason it's becoming like a bigger deal, I think, for a lot of people is because it just feels never ending and like nothing's going to change. But now we're getting cases that are like violent. It's not like this isn't like broken windows, which still sucks. I mean, it's awful for small businesses. But we're talking about like violent hate crimes. Like, for example, last June, Daniel Thomas Warren, a man with a long history of like violent acts, approached Daryl Preston, a black food cart owner. He approached him from behind, shouted racist slurs, beat Preston down, stomped on his face, including his eye socket, fractured bones. The pictures were horrendous, Mike. Because of these racist slurs, it was originally considered a hate crime, but that's not how your office sentenced Warren, right? Who is a white man. And the victim and the family complained that your office repeatedly were asking them whether they'd accept a lower sentence, which included no prison time. And they were clear they did not want that thrown out. But he only got a 3-year prison term, and then he got a book report. He had to read an anti-racist book and write an essay about it. We were talking about how Measure 110, you changed your mind about it because you're just like, people aren't feeling safe. How are people supposed to feel safe with that kind of sentence? Do you know what I mean? Especially people of color, Mike, because there's that. And then there's last September, a Multnomah County grand jury indicted another white guy for stabbing 2 teenagers in the Max in an alleged bias crime. What's even worse is the suspect had been arrested before the attack on multiple warrants, but wasn't booked in jail because of concerns that he had an infection that could spread to other inmates. So they were just like, bye. And then he almost killed these 2 teenagers, these 2 black teenagers. And again, like I asked, like, how is this supposed to make anyone feel safe?
Yeah, so a lot to unpack in your question there, Claudia. That last case you're talking about, that man I was just sentenced to, I believe, about 18 and a half years in prison for stabbing those young 2 teenagers. And I think that highlights the differences between different cases and some of the challenges that we face and how, our sentencing laws operate and other things. But I want to start by kind of unpacking what you said at first, which is people being released and not being held in jail. And because I think this is something that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and purposeful misinformation wants to mislead people into thinking and jumping to certain conclusions. I have a great graphic from our office, and I go out and I give this talk to the public all the time. And every time people leave going, oh my God, I had no idea. That's what our system looks like. That's what works. And so you really have to look at a continuum of starting from the point where the community member calls in a crime. Who do they talk to? Everyone says, I called the cops, right? Well, you don't call the cops. You call the Bureau of Emergency Communications. That's a city bureau. I hear from residents all the time in St. John's as well when I went up there. Long holds on 911, no answer for 911. So there's a city bureau. The next stop is the Portland Police, if you're in the Portland jurisdiction, or the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, or the Gresham Police, depending on where you are in Multnomah County. And then whether or not there's a police resource that's available at the time. And I hear from residents all the time that they call the police.
Mike, I'm going to just stop you there. I understand, but let's just speed it up to your part of it. Can you just speak to the book report sentence? Like, what was the thinking behind that? What was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I know you want me to speed it up, but this is the thing that people don't understand. I don't release people. The district attorney's office doesn't release people. When people are released out of jail, that's a decision made by the judges and the sheriff. And they're doing that in concordance with state law and the Constitution. So when you say things like, oh, the DA releases people, that's actually very factually inaccurate and misleading. And so that's what I'm trying to unpack. But to your question about the sentence in this one case, the individual man underneath the state laws was charged with a crime that he was facing 70 months in prison. That was the most likely outcome if he had gone to trial and was convicted of that crime, 70 months. What he ended up getting was a plea deal where he would serve 3 years of prison right away. And then he would be expected to do a number of things. You characterize it as a book report, but reading a book, doing some other work, and showing that he's made any kind of changes in his thinking around white supremacy, and showing the court and showing the victim in the community that he's changed his thinking. If that doesn't happen, he goes right back to prison for 2 more years. So we almost get to the entire 70 months that he was facing anyway. I probably don't have to tell you, Claudia, and other people, your listeners, that when you send somebody to prison because they are, racist or are white supremacists, they usually don't come out with their minds changed and thinking differently, but they do come out back to our community. And so I think the idea that was structured behind this plea deal was, you're going to do prison time. This is very serious. You're going to work on yourself and show that you've changed. And if you don't, you're going to go and continue to do more prison time. But if you do, and we incentivize you to change the way that you think, then maybe when you come out of prison, you'll be a safer member of our community.
I get what you're saying. You want rehabilitation, but this man has been in and out of jail for 18 years?
And yet it's never worked. And here we are today.
Yeah, see? But who's getting hurt?
Yeah, I mean, you got to change people, because he's getting out of prison no matter what, right? He's coming back to our community no matter what.
We were talking about you corrected the concept that the DA lets people go. Can I give you another scenario and maybe you can explain it? So a few neighbors of mine actually caught their own burglar. They flagged down police. They didn't even call it. They just flagged down police. They delivered the evidence because, they had video evidence. And they were told directly by your office that unless a grand jury indicts the suspect, he couldn't be arrested and held. And if there are no public defenders available, that he would be released and charges dropped. So your office basically told these people that there's no justice for you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I see that my office in this situation was the messenger about what is happening in the system, which is different than saying that my office is making the decision. And so, I think it sounds like whoever it was that was talking from my office was trying to explain, we'll take the case to grand jury. The grand jury will come back and we anticipate an indictment. And then if the person is there and there's still no defense attorney, the case will be set over and we'll wait for a defense attorney to get appointed. And then if there still is no defense attorney, the case ends up getting dismissed by a judge. Because we all know you have the right to remain silent. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you, right? That's a constitutional right that our state, the state of Oregon, is constitutionally mandated to provide that resource. Right now, that is not happening. And so judges are forced to dismiss cases because of the constitutional violation of rights. Has nothing to do with my office. I think my office is explaining to people. And I think that's why we bear the brunt of the criticism, because sometimes we're the messenger. But we're explaining to people that justice is being denied for victims and it's not okay.
So what's the major piece that would need to change then in order for people to start feeling safer and for there to actually be justice? Is your office hands tied behind your back? You can't do anything, or is there anything that your office could change?
No, we've done a lot of things over the past several years. I mean, our prosecution rate of cases, meaning the number of cases that are brought to us by police, the percentage we're prosecuting, are at 7 and 8 year highs. So we're working hard to do what we can, which is prosecute cases. That's our job. But when we bring a case to the court and the court dismisses it because the state is failing to appoint public defenders, then our job is frustrated and victims' rights are frustrated and those things aren't happening. Justice is denied. So how do you change that? The legislature has to finish and solve this problem. either they have to fully fund and get as many defense attorneys as we need, or they need to work with OPDS to make sure that the defense attorneys we have are picking up the cases that we have. But one way or the other, we can't keep having cases dismissed because the state's failing to provide public defenders to our local systems. And this is hitting every county in the state of Oregon. This is not just a Multnomah County problem. In fact, we don't even have, my understanding is Jackson County has the most unrepresented people right now in their system. So this is impacting all of us, and the legislature needs to take action to fix it.
Well, thank you for answering that. I also had some questions about the internal workings of your office, just because it's come up. And so we have to ask, your office is also, it's been making headlines basically. And it was reported that Chief Deputy District Attorney Kristen Snowden, who is the most senior woman prosecutor in your office, I believe she worked in the office for like 25 years, filed a 6-page complaint with HR last month, claiming that you have created a workplace culture of fear, intimidation, and retaliation. But this isn't the first time a woman in your office has complained about unfair treatment. So last year, the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries found substantial evidence in favor of former prosecutor Amber Kinney, who alleged that when she quit the office in 2022, that you had set back women's advancement in the office by decades. What's up with that?
Well, Claudia, I'll say culture change is hard. The voters put me in charge of this office because for 40 years, there had been an uninterrupted line of leadership that had not actually gone challenged. The office didn't support me. They voted for the other guy in 2020, and then I got put in to lead it. And I've been engaged in the work of culture change. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing in terms of I have the most diverse leadership team in the history of the agency. When we look at our promotional data, it's 50-50 in terms of men and women being promoted. We are setting the office up for success. We're doing equity surveys. And you know what? When you ask those questions, you find out that there's been a lot of things for a long time that need work. But I've been willing to ask the questions, and now we're doing the work on those. And of course, it's going to be challenging. But at the end of the day, culture change is very hard. Kirsten Snowden is a fantastic prosecutor. She's very good at trial. She supported my opponent last time. She supports my opponent this time. And you have to actually look at the complaint. And so I'm not going to comment on the merits of the complaint, but you have to unpack what's actually in the complaint. And when you get down to it, what she is saying is that a legal assistant in my office failed to attach police reports to recommendations that were sent to the governor's office. And that's a violation of statute. And that happened 2 years ago, but she's bringing it up right now, 6 weeks before the election. She talks about how I promoted a woman into a senior leadership position instead of a man. And that's the violation that she's alleging. Again, 6 weeks before an election. So you got to look at it in the context that it is. And I'll just say that, culture change is hard. And I don't think that anybody should anticipate or shouldn't anticipate that when you bring someone in to change a culture that, it's going to have some bumpy moments.
Yeah, totally. But, if you do get elected again, what are you going to do to correct that ship? Because she's still going to be working there. All the people who didn't vote for you are going to be working there. That's something to consider, No,
100%. And, there are some people in the office where I think, that is, going to probably continue until maybe they retire. That's possible. Also, there are a lot of people that don't feel that way and that are doing the work and are doing the change. And we are seeing a lot of movement. And, it takes time. And so we'll just continue to work through it. But the core mission and values of the people in the office showing up to do the work every day because they care about safety in our community, because they care about victims, is very much intact. There's politics, and this is always going to drive division internal in an office. But whether it's Kirsten Snowden or anyone else in the office, they're showing up every day for the right reasons. They really are doing the work, and they care about public safety deeply in our community, as do I.
Well, Mike, thanks so much. I want to make sure that you have a break before your next meeting, so I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you taking the time and answering kind of really tough, direct questions.
Yeah, it's complicated, Claudia. I appreciate you unpacking it, and hopefully people learn more, because there's a lot of folks out there trying to prey on misinformation right now. So thanks for the conversation.
that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.